Back Road Ministry, the world premiere, Mr. Mighty coming and let you live and direct from the Kia Optima Studios. So, a lot of people been asking me about Nas's new album. For those that don't know, I am old, but I still rap. You can find me on Reverb Nation, Back Road Ministry, /Reverb Nation, for all material from Back Road Ministry. So Nas's new album has been something that I've been asked about, and my feelings about Nas's new album. And I have to state unequivocally that I'm truly not a fan of the new album. I listened to a large amount of the tracks. Some of the tracks are old. Some of the tracks are definitely predated material that he kind of regurgitated. From time to time, rappers do that. Let's say you got a contract or you got a certain amount of album deals. You might regurgitate some old recordings that weren't placed on past albums to kind of, put an album together, which I believe Nas did with some of the tracks he had. But not really a fan of the album. The song about the cops shot the kid with the Slick Rick, little Slick Rick sample is tight, but the rap is not tight. It's like, I understand what Nas is trying to say, but there's no feeling behind it. It's just not the Nas that we're used to. It's just basically like, okay, I gotta do this album, let me throw it together, y'all put it wherever y'all gonna put it, just to say that I fulfilled that part of the contract. There's no real feeling behind that track. It's like these guys have become so commercial that you don't believe anything they really have to say anymore as it relates to the community. We got Kanye hanging out with Trump, Nas doing liquor commercials every day, every 5 and 10 minutes, and he's got all his issues with his baby's mother and the one crazy girl he was with, the ex-wife. And there's too much commercial success now, kind of taken away that edginess that some of these artists have. That's part one. And with some of the other songs, the thing I don't like now about a lot of the artists my age, because there's a large amount of a fan base that's being neglected, and it's my fan base my age. I'm 45. Nas, Jay-Z, a lot of these guys are older than me. But instead of feeding the base that they had, because you got this 45 contingency of kids that's from 35 to 45 that all we grew up on is hip-hop. So it's like you got this large base, and somewhere in society a long time ago this happened. If you're 35 to 45, the only thing you should be listening to is R&B. Who made that fucking rule? I want to know who made the rule. Who made the rule that you can't rap at a certain age? So if that's the case, you supposed to stop singing R&B at a certain age? So they're missing out on a large fan base due to there's no material being put out to that fan base. So we got like Sirius XM, Rock the Bells Radio L just took over Backspin, turned it to Rock the Bells Radio. He is trying to add in some of the material that artists from my generation are doing, some of that new stuff. But it's not enough of it. Rock the Bell Radio, Backspin, these stations are going to have to learn to incorporate new material from these artists into their rotation, because these artists can be making money. They're doing tours, they're doing shows, but they might get on the stage doing a tour. I remember Ice Cube did it a couple of years ago when he had his West album out. The last album he had out, when he had Rep That West and some other stuff on there, and nobody knew what the album was. Now, I knew the album because, I'm an Ice Cube guy. His last couple of albums, I've downloaded and I had the albums. But, nobody really knew what the hell the songs were because they're not getting the rotation, and that rotation is not being fed to people in his age group. So even on the R&B stations, they have to start feeding hip-hop into that fan base, that 35 to 45 fan base, because this is what we grew up on. Our artists are still out there trying to make a living. Our artists are still out there trying to eat. they still have a fan base that they can pump material to, but we're not getting the material. I mean, unless you know the album came out, it's kind of like the album Raekwon's last album. Unless you know that album was out, you didn't have that album. You hadn't downloaded that album with Tribe album. Unless you knew that album was out, you didn't have that album. So there was a lot of good material out the last 3-4 years that a lot of people didn't know anything about. Ice Cube's last album was one of the best albums that had been out in a long period of time. It was one of the best albums that had been out in a long period of time. It's a great album. It's a really, really good album. But a lot of people didn't hear it. A lot of people didn't hear it. So it's like our fan base is being neglected. So Nas comes out with his album, and it's not really to feed the fan base, because here we go. The other part of his idea is, well, I only can make music that has to sound like the kids sound today. No, we don't want to hear that. Why do you think we don't listen to it now? There's the 35 to 45-year-old fan base is not listening to A$AP Rocky. I mean, we're not listening to that. We're not listening to Chance the Rapper, because these guys can't rap. I don't want to listen to Nas try to sound like the guys is on the radio today. I mean, Nas is not 2 Chainz. He's better than 2 Chainz. Why would I want to hear Nas try to rap like 2 Chainz or try to sound like A$AP Rocky? I mean, why would Nas even want to do that? Why would you basically downgrade yourself to sound like artists that really don't sound that good? Why would you do that? So my problem with the Nas album and some other artists that have came out is even the R&B artists, some of the R&B artists, that back in the day the bar was high for them. I understand you're getting older. The bar was high. You came in the game with your own style. Suddenly, here come the young kids. You want to sound like them. You can't sound like them. Heck, why? If you're a singer, why would you want to sound like a singer who can't sing? It makes no sense. And I understand you got to sell your material, but you got a whole generation and genre of people who grew up on your music to sell it too. Artists today are lazy. The reason why Patti LaBelle is able to do what she does for so long, or some of these other old R&B heads are able to do what they've done for so long, is because they did not grow up lazy. They had to work. They had to get out there. They had to get on tour. They had to go out there and work. They had to go out there and get that money. They had to feed their base all the time. That's why when Patti comes to a town, she shuts it down every time she comes, because they're waiting on Patti to come. Patti could be 70. The minute she hits the town shuts down to go see Patti because of her work ethic. And these new artists, some of the old artists of my time, a lot of them, some of the late 90s, 2000, they don't want to work. You can't live off of the past and not go out there and give people what they want. And then a lot of them, old beefs, financial issues, still beefing. Some of the guys have got over that EPMD. I'm happy to say those guys have kind of got over their little beef. And, now they're communicating and stuff. Where am I going? But a lot of folks, fell out over the years and are trying to put things back together. So, I say this to say that, you got artists like Nas, great artists, trying to sound like things and people who they shouldn't be trying to sound like. Nas is a great artist. Nas is not an A$AP Rocky. Nas can be Nas and still get his genre to accept and buy his material. But the problem is that, and the biggest problem is that, we have to support our artists. But the only way to do that is our artists have to be in a position where they can make money. And that's not being given to them. They're not being placed in that position where they can make money. So these backspin stations, these rock the bell radios, everybody's not going to be on TV, LL. Everybody's not going to be making movies, LL. Some people, to survive, they're going to have to, work the music. But the only way to do that is y'all got to start playing them more in a rotation, kind of like R&B stations do it. They mix in the old stuff and the new stuff. They give us a chance to hear our artists. We need that opportunity to hear our artists. This is a hip hop generation. I'm 45. I'm part of a hip hop generation. Why am I just the only thing I can listen to is either old school hip hop or some R&B? I mean, how's that fair? The only thing I listen to is R&B. I mean, who made that rule? Who made up this rule? All you can listen to is R&B. You can't listen to nothing else but R&B. I mean, who made up that rule? Who made up that rule? So, giving us a chance to hear some good music. Giving us some chance to hear our artists. That's all we're asking for. But it's going to come at the head of these old school artists and say, okay, let's start changing the format of some of these radio stations where all the material that's out, all the things that we're doing are being played, so we can start feeding our generation. They want to hear good music. We don't want to hear A$AP Rocky. I don't want to hear that garbage. You got Puffy on the track with A$AP Rocky. He sounded horrible. You got good singers sounding like the crap they hear from these little young R&B singers who couldn't sing or whistle, who can't whistle a tune. Why would you downgrade yourself? And that's the problem. Get the bar back up to where it's supposed to be. Don't let these so-called people who in the industry, who so-called care about the industry, run down the music. As African Americans, as people who love music of all generations and cultures, we got to save the music ourselves. These big wigs don't care about what they put out. They can care less. We have to save the culture. We have to save the music. But the only way to do that is we got to fight for the music. We got to defend the music. And we got to set the bar high again. So these young artists can see the bar is still high. The bar ain't lowered, it's still high. Mr. Markley, Back Road Ministry, peace.